Just to go on record saying gay conversion therapy sounds very gay.
You think the way to be ungay is to hug a bunch of dudes?
Yeah, come on.
What are we talking about here? Welcome back to Other People's Lives. I'm Joe Santagato.
I'm Greg Dybec.
For anyone out there that would like to be a guest on our show, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Our email is oplpodcast@gmail.com. Just send us your story and we'll get back to you.
Today, we're speaking to someone who reached out to us. Their email read, "I put myself through gay conversion therapy." They are also from a Mormon household, so we're going to jump into that too and how it's all connected. But we've got the guest on the line, and thank you so much for being on today.
Hey, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, of course. So I think it'll be important to kind of talk about your upbringing and growing up in a Mormon household specifically. Can you kind of just walk us through your earliest memories of that?
Absolutely. I was born and raised a member of the LDS Church, of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the full name. So if I say LDS or that's why. But grew up in this Mormon household. Family we're multi-generational, have been Mormons for many years. It's the reason my family came to America in the late 1800s. So it's very deep instilled on both sides of my family. And yeah, I grew up in a very concentrated Mormon area in Arizona. And that's where I was.
And do you remember when you realized that you were gay?
About 13 or so, 10, 11, 12, 13, like in that puberty age when you start realizing, most people like girls and some people like boys and all that fun stuff. So right at the puberty area. And it wasn't so much instilled of like, this is bad, but there was something inside of me that said, don't tell anybody. Nobody else is like this. You are the only one. Because I had no other examples of any gay people in my life.
Did you think that your parents would disapprove?
Yeah, I did. I had a lot of fear around telling my parents. Actually, the night that I officially came out to them before I started therapy and all that, I asked them first, I said, will you always love me? And then they said yes. And I was like, okay, good, because here we go. And then, yeah. And so
what was their reaction when you came out to your parents?
My mom was in shock. She truly silence, and she just absolute shock. My dad, he opened his arms. He said, come here, let me hug you. He said, I love you. He said, we've always known. My mom said, I cannot believe this. My dad said, I've always known. It's okay. So yeah, it was good overall. And it was, shock at the initial moment.
So being a Mormon and like the church specifically, what's their take on being gay?
They, at the time, they didn't talk about it. They still barely talk about it. And when they do, they say, well, we hope the best for you and would love for you to stay a member of our church. And in order to do so, you need to have a completely celibate life all by yourself, is kind of the Mormons' option on that. And I don't think that's very fair. So I don't anymore. But yeah, that's the.
Oh, so their take is kind of like, if you're gay, that's fine, but don't have sex with men.
Yeah, don't have sex with men. Don't act upon it. You get to spend the rest of your life by yourself, being a very nice person, and never loving anybody.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Cool, amazing. Can't wait to go to church every week. Like that's what they're waiting for me to be so excited about, is to, I don't know, make the programs for everyone to read. Like, what would you like me to do while I'm here?
Yeah, you'll have a lot of your time on your hands to dedicate
a lot of
to
free
the
time on my hands.
to the church.
So you get to that point where you come out to your parents, and then, immediately after that, what is your life like? Because eventually you said that you did,
So yeah,
therapy.
So I came out to my parents because it was time for me to go on my mission, to become a Mormon missionary. The guys walking around with the badges at 19 years old.
Right.
So it was about that time, and I knew that I wanted to be honest with my parents about that. I wanted to be upfront and say, and by this point, I already had been sexually active. Very kind of like cruisy, sort of, one-off hookups here and there. But in order to do that, in order to go on the mission, I had to be like sexually clean or pure or what have you. So I had to repent and also probably like deal with this is kind of how I saw it. I saw like dental work or like a medical procedure you needed to get done before you could like go on the mission. So I told my parents, I said, here is where I am. I am gay. I've had experiences with men. They're like, great, we don't know what we're doing. So they said, let's go to the bishop. So we go to the bishop, who's kind of the head of our congregation, and said, here's what's going on. He said, okay, great. I don't know what to do. He said, so let me go to my higher up, who he did the next person up from him, who turned around and said, yes, actually, there's this great therapy that makes boys straight again. And it's great. And we're here for it. It's a wonderful therapist who does fantastic work. And then that made its way back down to us. And we said, well, if everyone above us that spiritually says this is a great idea, great, then this is a great idea. Let's do it. And my parents didn't have health insurance at the time. And so we kind of struck a deal with the therapist, essentially, of where it's like, listen, and I had a pretty good job at a warehouse at the time, making pretty good money right out of high school. I said, well, I can pay for all of this. And he struck us a little deal. I think it was like $45 a session or something. But for the next almost 3 years, I paid out of my own pocket for about 20 grand worth of therapy.
Wow.
Over that time.
So
yeah.
Did you also sort of see this as like an issue that you wanted to correct?
Yeah, I saw this as an issue that could be corrected, is how it was presented to me by all parts, spiritual, therapist, and being my parents were all kind of lost on this trail together. Both of my parents had experiences with gay people in their life. And so they were like, no, I think like some people are just gay and that's all right. And I, however, was a little too deep into it. I was like, no, this is going to work. I bought it pretty hook, line, and sinker. The way he was talking about how sexuality, the way the therapist said that how sexuality forms and all that fun stuff, it kind of, it resonated with me and my story a bit. So I don't know, it hooked me. I bought into it, even though my parents weren't fully bought into it. Both of them came to me within the first 6 months of me starting therapy and said, you don't have to do this. We love you no matter what. And I was like, no. I'm going to do it. I'm going to be the winner, the poster boy, the great guy, the guy who finishes this, all of that. So, yeah.
That's really interesting. What do you think gave you that attitude and approach? Was it pressure from the church and your religion?
It was a little bit of that and a little bit of, I have a chance to be something different that I haven't seen anyone else do yet. There are no examples in the world of people who have come out of gay conversion therapy and saying, yes, it works. I wonder why. And so here I was being like, great, now I can be that person. I can be that poster boy. I can tell everyone how this works and how great it is and how amazing it is. Because if not, why would the therapist or any other person, why would they dedicate their lives to this? Because there are people who have dedicated decades and decades and decades to this type of work for it to go nowhere.
Right. It's a lot of pressure on a 13-year-old.
Yeah. Well, I was like 19 at the time, but still, but yeah, it was that's where that was.
So, okay. I think so. Then we're very interested to have you walk us through some of these sessions and how they went. So do you remember back to the beginning? You had just mentioned before kind of his explanation of how sexuality forms. We're really interested in hearing kind of the, I guess, theory that he pitched.
So their theory on that subject was, as you are prepubescent, right? When you're a little kid, ages, birth to like 9, 10, 11, before puberty starts, you need to have connections with people of your same gender. It's very important that, they thought, the boys hang out with the boys, the girls hang out with the girls, right? They have cooties and they're gross. And so we only hang out with each other. And you get a certain amount of needs fulfilled, quote unquote, by being with boys in this, like being in your same gender for this amount of time. It filled some kind of psychological need that you have had enough time with men. If for whatever reason you do not get that proper amount of time or connection or whatever, or just aren't friends with a lot of boys, then you begin to still have those same desires, but because of puberty, they become sexualized. And now you have this like attachment to this whole thing. And for me, that resonated a lot with my story. I grew up in a house of all brothers, but a lot of my friends were girls because I was a theater kid. I was in choir. I was little singing dancing groups and show choirs and all that stuff growing up. And so I made friends with the girls. I don't know, because we had the same sense of humor, because we got along well, because it was, I don't know, because sometimes people are just friends with boys and girls. Who cares? But the way that he was talking to me, I was like, well, yep, that resounds with me. And okay, I see that. And I guess that's where that comes from. And so as he was, and also I had issues in the past with my older sibling and a little bit of like abuse, just like getting beat up on the regular. So it's like, oh, you may have had, when you have, trauma like that, and that way you can then sexualize the trauma in order to try to get over it. And so he was like, maybe it's also part of this and part of this and part of this. And so it resonated with me, and it was almost like a new something for me to do. I was so excited to be like, great, let's start this new giant project in my life. And I could be so passionate about it. And then after we finish this up, and I always thought, give me a year, give me 2 years, then I can head out on my mission.
Mm-hmm.
I was always looking for the ending date. I was always like, great. So a year and a half in, we're 2 years. Like, how long is this supposed to go on before these feelings start kicking in?
Right.
Because it never happened.
Yeah. And now you're straight. Thanks for calling.
And now I'm super straight, and that's how it works. I'm very gay.
He's like, I'm gayer than when I started.
It made me gayer. It was interesting. Well, because what they do, what it winds up happening is that they wind up just taking all of your time. Like, a lot of these people come into this with some kind of double life already. I've met men who are like, yes, I have a wife and kids, and I'm a respected member of my church and work and da 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 da. Also, I have a lover on the side for 10 years that nobody knows about. That's some guy who was on the other side of town. Mm-hmm. And then you hear stories of men who have full double lives, who have full this, that, and the other. I heard a story of a man who would travel every other week. He had to travel, and he lived his full straight life with his wife and kids here, and he lived a full double gay life in his other city once a week that he had to go to. And he went
we've
back
talked
and
to
forth.
A lot of people in that situation on the
exactly.
show. It's mind-blowing how common.
It's so common how many people have these double lives. And so what essentially they did, what conversion therapy did for me was take my double life and be like, great, now you're going to show up here and this and this and this and this. Because it was so secret. Like, if I ran into someone on the street, I wouldn't say hi to them. I remember one time being at an IKEA. I was with my mom, and this guy was with his, girlfriend or sister, someone of roughly his age. He was younger like me, probably like early, like 19, 20, 21. And from what I know, he wasn't married or anything. Anyway, he's with this girl at an IKEA, and I'm with my mom at IKEA. And we both had to like we did that thing where as our partners were looking the other direction, we both had to like give each other an eye contact of like, hey, I see you. I know you. You're not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything. Great. Keep on walking. Like, it was a small acknowledgement, and just we kept walking like nothing happened. And it was so weird to me. I was like, why can't, like, this person that I see 3 times a week, why can't I be like, hey, mom, here's my friend from that thing I do all the time?
Yeah. So this was a group setting?
Yeah. So I was individual. So I was in therapy at one point up to 5 times a week.
Wow.
So I had my individual. Yeah. So it's like a pyramid scheme. Like, they just kept on, like, it was just like more and more. So I had my individual therapy. I had my Saturday morning. It was kind of like a group for like younger guys in like their early 20s who were conversion therapy. We called it dealing with SSA, or same-sex attraction. We didn't use the word gay or anything like that. So we called it my SSA group on Saturday mornings. I had this group from this like weekend that I did once that meets. It was called our gym group Journey into Manhood. So I had like this gym group that I met at with once a week. I had Evergreen, which was at the time, they've now changed their name, but it was the Mormon group specifically. So like a spiritual connotation around this whole thing. And then on top of that, I had a Thursday night sex addict group because I was, 19 and occasionally jerking off. So therefore I was an absolute sex addict. So yeah, 5 times a week I was in some type of therapy.
I was going to ask, how long were you doing that?
Yeah, I did. I think I had all 5 for maybe a course of like 6 months or so, but I usually had 3 to 4 at all times.
Wow. So in I guess still kind of those early stages, so we kind of understand the theory that they're throwing your way, and then any memorable sort of exercises or tactics that they try to impose?
Yeah, it's a lot of, so their theory now is, okay, so you are a gay man, you're dealing with these feelings. How do we help? How do we connect it back to that child who is missing his, he needs to fill his cup or whatever, metaphorically, of proper OSA connections, opposite sex attraction.
It's weird too. It's like he wasn't around enough men, so he's gay now.
Exactly. So now I like really want to be around men, which is again hilarious because I've been raised my entire life with 3 brothers and a dad. Like no, I've been surrounded by men my whole life, but all right, cool. But so what it is it's like, cool, be better friends with straight guys. is kind of what it boils down to. Try to have great connections with straight guys. And they're like, great, so learn how to play basketball. And I was like, next sport, please. I hate basketball. Yes, I am tall. I am gangly. I have no coordination. I am literally the worst basketball player on planet Earth. It's okay. I accepted it. I have moved on. We just do a different sport. And he was like, no, you have to do basketball. And I was like, no. I will do baseball. I'll do fencing. I'll fucking learn football. I don't care, but I'm not doing basketball. And he's like, you have to learn how to basketball because one day you're going to be walking down the street and there's going to be a group of guys who need someone to play and you're going to take off your shirt and go join them. And I was like, are you shitting me?
Yeah.
That's never going to happen. Like in my head, of course, naturally, like that's what I think now. But at the time I was like, okay, well, maybe I can do that. Because
when you're straight, that happens like once a week.
Yeah, straight, that happens every day. I know. Like as he was saying stuff to me, I wanted to be like, who are these straight guys he's comparing? Like he's never met my dad, my brothers, my uncles, the men in my life, because they don't do that doesn't happen.
Take your shirt off and go sweat with men so you're not gay anymore.
So you're not gay anymore.
Wait, what?
It was don't worry, there's a lot of holding as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of which I'm down for.
Oh, wait, holding.
Wait, like in the groups?
Physically holding within the therapy. We need to have proper, non-sexualized, but still intimate male touch.
Okay.
So they'd be holding, which is it's great. And a lot of times it led to crying and releasing things. It was therapeutic in a way, but also there was times where it was just okay, I think you want to hold me.
Right.
I think I don't need to be held, but you're really harping on it.
So you're holding on to your therapist, or it's just another person in the group?
Yeah. Therapy, my therapist himself, I've done it with also in groups with people where they're like, great, this is going to be more of a holding session where we kind of discuss this, that, or the other. So yeah, it's very physical. And we all sit around and essentially talk about how bad we feel about all the stuff we did. Well, we only talk about how bad we feel after we talk about all the stuff we did. So now we're just a bunch of guys sitting around bragging about how we have a second life and suck as many dicks as possible.
And so it just becomes
it just becomes this group where we're all just talking, we're just sharing sex stories at all times.
It's like an episode of Sex in the City. You're at a brunch, basically.
It's fully Sex in the City, where we sit around and then we're like, I did this awful thing. I feel so bad, blah, 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 blah. I'll never do it again. It's okay, well, then why'd you tell that same story last week and the week before and the week before? Every week we go out there, we would act out is the word we used instead of hooking up. We acted out with someone else.
Acted out what you did?
You acted out. You had a sexual encounter. You
misbehaving, act out like that, not acting out.
Oh.
Greg thinks you're talking about you were acting out a scene in therapy or something.
Oh no! You were misbehaving.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So we had to once a week go in there and admit I acted out 3 times this week or twice. And by the way, jerking off by yourself counted as acting out. Even if you had no sexual thoughts, even if it was I strictly solely work thought about just focused on physical pleasure alone, that they were absolutely not.
Is that frowned upon in the Mormon religion? If you're straight and you're jerking off, it's still not.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, masturbation is not allowed
until marriage, or ever.
Really, ever.
Okay.
Really, ever. Yeah. Sex is only supposed to be in the connotation of a husband and wife, and some people even go as further as and only to make children.
Okay.
I grew up in a house where my parents were like, no, we have enough.
That's why they have so many kids.
Literally.
Wow. So at this point, when you're going through these exercises, and obviously upon reflection and in hindsight, looking back, it doesn't seem helpful, but in that moment, did you actually feel bad? Did you feel bad about acting out?
Yeah, but that also was nothing new. I've had a lot of sexual shame just from growing up Mormon, just from the time that I was 11, 12, 13 is also at the time when internet computers and everyone started having the internet in their homes, late 90s, early 2000s. And so at that same time, it was the only thing we talked about at church every week was that the internet is filled with porn and and it's so easy to find, and don't you dare any of you young boys go out there and find it. Mm-hmm. I was like, well, then why are we talking about it every week and giving it all of our energy?
Yeah.
But that's beyond the point. But we still would every week would be anyway. And so feeling a lot of shame around seeing a naked body, that's been instilled in me my whole life. So that was nothing new. That was just, now we're just, more intense with it. It's kind of the only thing we talk about.
Did you ever feel like the therapy was working at any point?
I never felt that it was working in order to make me feel straighter. Excuse me, my apologies. And I don't feel like I was ever working to make me feel straighter. There was therapeutic elements that did help me. I had a lot of anger towards like my brother and towards some people in my life and this, that, and the other that any therapist would have helped at that moment. Mm-hmm. Like I needed therapy at 19 years old. I just kind of went down this specific route, but I was able to work out some issues here and some issues there. But I'm even finding out now with my current therapist, I now have a current amazing gay therapist who's very just fantastic, phenomenal, been with him for many years. And I'm realizing some stuff now that it's like, oh, I thought I worked on that before, but I guess I still have issues with it. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's go back into this. Or I'm even my first session with my new therapist. I was like, hey, just so you know, here's what I've gone through a little bit. So I just want to make sure I'm not too messed up from it. But yeah.
So how long were you in this conversion therapy before you were like, and can you kind of describe the moment you were like, all right, this is pointless?
Yeah, well, so I started when I was 19. When I was 21, I was like, I should probably go to college now. So I did. And so I didn't start college till I was 21. And that's when I physically stopped going to the groups. But I was still very much in it mentally, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I was like, great guys, I'm going away to college. Everything that I've learned for the past few years, I'm going to like take out into the world, which is something that a lot of those guys don't do. It becomes a lot of these guys' social life as well, because you're there with them 5 times a week. You see some of these people every day. You talk about your most intimate details with each other. So you get to know each other, but they kind of gets like a little Lord of the Flies. Like it gets just a little too intense, and there's nobody learns how to be friends or make friends with straight guys or anything like they learn how to do all these things. They just never actually go out and do it. Mm-hmm. And so I went to college to be like, I'm going to go do it. So I went to go do it. And I kind of just ignored everything and everyone. I didn't hook up. I didn't act out. I didn't guys, girls, nothing. I just went to class and was a theater major and was there on a choir scholarship and told everyone I was straight. And for some reason they believed me. And so, and I just kind of put my head down and went. It wasn't until I didn't fully come out till I was like 26 living in the city that I live in now. Wow. So it was many years still of me kind of sitting on a fence, of me saying, okay, well, if I can't afford the therapy, if I don't want to do the therapy, but I'm still very much in it, how else can I make it work? How can I, in so many ways. And when I finally did come out to my parents at 26, they said, we've been watching you for 7 years sit on this fence and we're just so happy you made a choice. Mm-hmm. And that you're okay with this. And so I lucked out in that department very much so with my parents. But yeah, it was, I forgot where the question initially was, but that's my answer. So,
but, so at 26, you've made the decision, okay, I'm gay.
Yeah.
How much of like sitting on the fence had to do with your religion, and how did you kind of, I guess, battle that with your decision to identify as gay?
Yeah, a lot of it did have to do with my religion. I was still very active when I moved to the big city that I'm in now. I didn't know anybody. I had like a cousin who lived an hour away, but that was the closest person I knew. And so I was still very active in my church, even when I came here in the LDS church. And so I was active in my Mormon ward here, and it was great. It was exactly what I needed in my life. And for me, I knew that I couldn't give that up. I knew that I needed that, but I also knew that I was absolutely gay. And so for me, it was through a prayer. It was through a spiritual connection. It was through praying where I said to Heavenly Father, I felt this need to pray about something. I wasn't sure what it was. And I kind of just went through okay, thank you for my apartment and for my job and my new roommates and my family and the this and the that. And then I said, thank you for the opportunity that I have to love anyone, even if it is a man. And I remember feeling so much personal comfort, and like a blanket had been put on me. And as if the Lord himself had said, like, finally you got it. Like, that's it. That's it. You get to love. That's the gift. And yep, it's a guy.
That's incredible.
So, for me, it was the first time within myself that I was confident enough to say, like, yes, that's it. That's what I have. Whether I want it or not, it's what I have. And I remember calling my parents the next day saying, here's where I am. Here's what I've experienced. I can't deny this. I can stand within myself in front of my maker and say, here I am. Here is this part of me. And I'm still loved. Then I'm going to be fine. Like I needed to feel it within myself before I could really outwardly do it to really anyone else, if that makes sense.
This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. When life feels like it's moving at a million miles per hour, it's important to take a moment and celebrate your wins. Whether they're big wins, small wins, maybe just getting through a day, checking something off your to-do list, being a better person, whatever it is, we have to stop and we have to pat ourselves on the back and celebrate these wins. This year in particular is flying by, and it's also important to slow down, take a moment, and realize what adjustments you want to make for the remaining months of this year. And therapy can help you take stock of your progress and set achievable goals. In a year where, for me, it feels like there's been more on my plate than previous years, therapy has been a very important tool to do what I just said, to actually slow down, take stock of my progress. Also, just celebrate my wins and myself and know that I'm not going to be perfect and I'm not going to accomplish every single thing that I set out to do, but that's okay because perfection doesn't exist, right? But as long as I know that I'm giving it my all and that I'm constantly reflecting, being grateful for what I am accomplishing and taking that time to just understand, where I am and reevaluate what I do want to achieve. And we typically break things down in terms of months and years. And like I said, this year's flying by. So this is a great moment to stop, look at the work you've done, be proud, but also know what adjustments you want to make and what it is that you want to spend this next, 6 months on achieving before we're at another new year. And if you're thinking about starting therapy, then you should definitely give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, so it's designed to be flexible to fit into your schedule, no commuting or anything like that. It's entirely online. Plus, you can switch therapists at any point. So you could really make sure that you find the right fit, and it's super easy to do so. Take a moment and visit betterhelp.com/OPL today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/OPL. This episode is sponsored by Blue Chew. We're going to talk about sex for a second. If you're a fan of this show, I know you're okay with that. Guys, do you remember the days where it seemed like you were always ready to go? And by ready to go, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Well, now you can get that feeling again and you can increase your performance in the bedroom. And with that, you're going to boost your confidence, which is a key factor when it comes to the performance in the bedroom. How can you do this, you ask? With Blue Chew. Blue Chew is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but you can take them anytime, day or night, and they are chewable tablets, plus fraction of the cost. Best part is, it's all done online, no trips to the doctor's office, nothing awkward like that. Gets shipped to you in discreet packaging, so no one has to know but you. The truth is, you could be missing out on the best sex of your life, and you don't want to miss out on that. It's one of the last things that we want to miss out on. So you might be asking, does it work? Do you think you need it? How about this? Try it out for a month and see. We know you're going to love it, and that month trial is actually free. So you really have nothing to lose to see if this is a fit for you. So Blue Chew wants to help you have better sex, so you can discover your options at bluechew.com. Chew it and do it. And we've got a special deal for OPL listeners. You can try Blue Chew free when you use promo code OPL at checkout. So all you do is pay the $5 shipping. And that's bluechew.com, promo code OPL to receive your first month free. And that's bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring the podcast. No, that makes perfect sense. And have you been able to eliminate the shame that existed before?
It's been a journey, and there's times when I think I have, and there's times when I am like, we are done with that. And then there's times when I'm in my therapy session, he's like, so is that shame creeping up again? I'm like, it is shame creeping up again. Like, she is deep down in there. He's like, that's why we're here. We're going to get it out.
Are you still Mormon?
No. No, I was an active member until November 5th of 2015, when a policy was leaked from the church that, because they didn't announce it themselves, someone leaked it to the press before, and it was a new policy that was coming out about how because same-sex marriage had just been legalized across the country. So it said any children of same-sex marriage are only allowed to be baptized within the church if they're 18, out of their parents' house, and have disavowed their parents' relationship.
Whoa.
If they are raised by a same-sex couple. And if you, as a member of the church, decide to be in a same-sex couple, you are considered an apostate to the church. And I was like, okay, so, and people are like, so are you going to stay or going to go? I'm like, well, what's the point of me staying? Mm-hmm. So I can get married to a man, wear my little scarlet letter of an A every day for apostate, and then raise kids in a church where they will never see me, because the Mormon church is very it's very active with the members. It's very member driven. So the members give the talks and they lead the classes and they do this, that, and the other. They say prayers and it's very, you're busy when you're in a Mormon church. And because I would be considered an apostate, I wouldn't be allowed to be busy at all. They wouldn't give me any jobs. They wouldn't give me any things. My children would never see me speak in a spiritual sense in front of people. They would never see me teach a class. They would never see me give a prayer. They would never see me be able to exist in a spiritual realm inside of a church. And I technically don't have any spiritual kind of things outside. So why am I going to raise my kids in that church? And they're only allowed to be baptized, even though when they're 8 years old, all their friends and cousins are going to be baptized, but they can't because of their parents' choices to bring them into this family.
Yeah.
It just sounded so preposterous. I was like, okay, well, if you don't want me to be here, just say so. And they're like, no, we want you to be here. You just can't have any of the perks ever in this life or the next. You're like, then what's the point?
Mm-hmm. And how do your parents feel about, that?
They are lifelong members. They're going to be lifelong members. That's okay. I love them. They love me. My dad is currently he's a bishop of his own congregation back home. And they have had even someone come to them say, my child is, this is our son who is gay. At the time he was in 8th grade or something. And my dad's like, okay, great. That's wonderful. The first thing you're going to do is love your child. Second, child, be cool to your parents. I have a gay son. They're like, well, isn't there a therapy? My dad says it is. Yes, that therapy technically does exist. We already spent $20,000 in 3 years of my son's life on it, and it didn't work. So you can give it a try. And they're like, never mind. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's been glad in that way that ripple has been able to happen, that other families have been able to be saved from that other people have been able to be helped. My parents, I again lucked out. They love me. And they understand what the church is. I don't know. They agree to disagree, if you will. But regardless, I love my family, and I absolutely have the utmost respect for the traditions, for the spiritual traditions of my family. And I'm not a fan of the Mormon church, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But you're still spiritual yourself.
Oh yes, I'm very much still spiritual with myself. I still have a very much believe in a beautiful higher power that does amazing things, and I try to be a better person. If anything, I'm more genuinely spiritual than before. When it was just kind of prescribed to you before, you're like, okay, great, this is the thing I do.
Right.
But when I had to actually find out what it meant to me, the rules in my life that I want to keep. If I sit here and say, well, so-and-so just made up a whole religion, well, why can't I just make up a whole bunch of fun rules for me to live by? Why do I got to live by his guy's rules? I can just do my own.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, then I'll make up my own rules to live my own good life and to be a good person. How about we start there? So I've kind of just been focusing on that more than anything.
Okay.
Then what organization gets 10% of all my money?
Is that what it is?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. For Mormonism, 10%.
I know. It's like having an agent.
Yeah, I know. Truly.
Whoa.
Which is why which is why I feel like I talk about gay conversion therapy in the Mormon church so openly and freely, is because they're more than happy. I'm more than happy to stop talking the second they pay me all my money back.
Yeah.
But I've given, the LDS church 10% of all my money since I was born, and therapy was 20 grand alone. So if you guys want me to stop talking, run me my check.
Wow, that's wild. And just what a wild journey you've been on. So where are you now? I know you mentioned that you're in therapy, obviously still combing through all of this, but how would you say, like, just sex life, everything?
Sex life is great. It's fun. It's wonderful. It's not shameful. And it's smarter. Because before, the only sex life that I would have before, because I didn't want to have anyone where they would, where we would catch feelings for each other or see someone twice or any of that. So all of my sexual activity during therapy, pre-therapy, all that was very sketchy. It was in the back of porn shops. It was on Craigslist. It was on it was like pre-Grindr. You had to like call these weird phone lines and just like pray the other person wasn't a murderer and looked somewhat like what they looked like. And so it was very sketchy kind of one-offs. But since being able to come out, it's like, okay, well now I can actually have relationships with people. I can accept the people for who they are now that I accept myself more for who I am. And sometimes it is going to be a fun hookup once or twice. And sometimes it's going to be a relationship or a friendship or a this, that, or the other. Like the fact that I can just even have a second conversation with a gay person.
Right.
Is like leaps and bounds of where I was. So yeah, it's good in that way. I have an amazing therapist. I'm now able to work on just other issues in my life and actual things that prevent me from being the best version of myself, as opposed to what for so long this was like this wall of gay in front of me that stopped me from everything. And now it's like, well, no, that the wall is as big as you need to make it, and I don't need to make like it's there. It's in my pocket. It's fine. We're good. So like realizing the other things in my life that I do need to work on. I don't know, and being smarter just with all of it now.
Yeah. I mean, in your opinion, like all the people that were sort of in these therapy sessions with you, like these are all gay men?
Yeah. There was, because we were pretty open, because we would talk about the Kinsey scale, which is like 1 is completely straight, 6 is completely gay, and then like everything else in the middle. And so some guys would be like, well, I'm more bisexual. I don't know. It was kind of a range because I was very gay. A lot of the guys, I would say 75% of the guys were gay, attracted to men. Whether or not they were in relationship with women or had children, they had an attraction to men only. Whereas some had kind of an attraction to women, some attraction to men, whereas some had, like there was one guy who he married kids, have an attraction to women. He also like fooled around with a guy once when he was like a teenager. And that led to like these thoughts of like, ooh, do I want to fool around with guys again? And so like, he then goes on throughout his life. He eventually gets himself to his therapy because these thoughts are kind of obsessing with him. He then gets really involved in it. He no longer has these thoughts, and everyone's like, yay, you did it. You win gay conversion therapy. I'm like, well, I don't know if that's what? Like, that doesn't really count. Like a guy getting over an issue from an experience he had once is very different than someone saying, I'm only experiencing these feelings. Why do I not experience those feelings? And so that was always kind of weird to be like, oh no, you're all the same like that. It's like, no, we're not all the same like that. This isn't like, we're not, I don't know. And so it's stuff like that.
Yeah. And you alluded to this, I think, but this is obviously still going on. Like their gay conversion therapy is potentially thriving business.
Therapy.
Reparative?
So okay. The interesting thing about it is all the language they use keeps you from realizing you're in gay conversion therapy necessarily. They call it reparative therapy for unwanted same-sex attraction, is I think the official title. But which like, and so also legally, I as an adult, because I was 19 when I started, I as an adult going to this man saying, I have this, and at the time for me, it was unwanted same-sexual attraction. And I say, hey, I'm experiencing this. And he's like, great, I can take this away from you, which he can't. But I was like, okay, great, let's do it. And so so a lot of people are like, how is this even legal? And it's like, well, it's legal because I asked for a service and he provided it.
Right. Unwanted is like sort of absolves them from being the ones who are like, we're just a service.
Exactly. If I can come to you and say, I don't want this thing I have, and you say, well, I got a thing that can get rid of it, then we take care of it. Yeah. But in all the years that I did this, I had never met someone who was done, who was finished,
Right.
who was feeling these feelings without having to force themselves to feel it.
Right. Wow. Well,
So yeah.
Well, that's shocking for one. That
Right?
Thought it would work.
That's the one thing. If I like ran into my old therapist today, I would say, why not one? Not one success story. Why didn't I meet one success story in 3 years?
That guy's probably like, I don't know, dude, I'm gay. I like hugging dudes.
Yeah,
So that's
literally,
why-
exactly.
He's like, that hugging thing was my thing. I came up with that.
So the big study was done, I think in the 2010s-ish or so. A giant study was done where they interviewed like 200 and something men who had been through this therapy. And I believe it was 88% said, no, doesn't work. And it's like, okay, cool. So they looked at the other 12%. Great. For who here, who says it works? 1/3 of those guys says, I mean, like it worked in that kind of like the one guy who's like, well, I had an issue, but I didn't really want to hook up with men, but like I had an issue around like homosexuality, but I no longer have that issue. So it kind of works. And they're like, okay. Then there's the other third of men. They said, okay, does it work for you? They said, it does work. It fully worked. It worked everything. It's amazing. It's perfect. I am completely celibate though. And that's a personal choice. You're like, okay, cool. So then there's the last third group. They said it works. It works. If you work it, you do it amazing. I'm married to a woman. I love having sex with women. This is great. This is phenomenal. This is my life. And they're like, great, let's talk to you guys. So of those men, every single one of them was a therapist.
Wow.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, duh, because you can't sell the Kool-Aid if you ain't drinking it every day.
Yeah.
Like, truly, like these men have bought into this so deeply. And they're like, no. And it's funny because like you hear so much today, just like be who you are. That sentence didn't make sense to me until about like 4 or 5 years ago. This whole like be who you are, because it's like, well, sure I'll be like who I am, but who I am has to be the series and lists of things put out by this other person, or this church says I have to be these series and lists of things, so that's who I am. Or I have to go to a therapist and make sure that I can stay close to this list of things who I'm supposed to be, so that way I can say that's who I am. Never actually finding out this like, who are you sort of situation. And so these guys just avoid it to now they're like, listen, with all the work I've done, I better be straight, even though they're not.
Right. And I'm just going to make a career out of it. So
they're just going to make a career out of quote unquote being straight.
Right.
So they do. And it's like, but also like, they want us to be like, I don't know. They're like, don't dress too loudly and don't do this and don't. Like, you guys are just taking all the fun things out of life and not just sucking dick, like fun clothes and RuPaul's Drag Race and fun. Like he was like, at the time I wanted to go into theater, and I was like, well, there's plenty of straight men in musical theater on Broadway working. Like that was my argument to him. He's like, just don't go. You have to get a regular job in something else. It's like, oh, buddy, I don't think you understand. My relationship with theater is longer than my relationship with men. Like, no, buddy, that's not how this works.
It's like, no, get into the NBA.
Yeah.
Literally get into the NBA, go get a boring job in an office, hide out from everyone, and let nobody know that you're gay. Jeez. And hopefully your wife will one day like be cool.
Well, thank you for sharing this journey with us and being so open about it. And it is really, really awesome to hear where you are now, and the work that you're still putting in. I think that's important too. Like you're not even here saying that this is perfect. Like you're not done either with working on yourself, and that's really cool. But it's awesome to hear that you're so able to effectively work on yourself now because you were able to get over that obstacle. But wow, that's mind blowing to hear all of that.
Yeah, no, it was a weird 3 years. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, again, just to echo what Greg was saying, we appreciate you coming on and being so honest. And thank you so much. I think a lot of people are going to benefit from hearing this conversation too, because I'm sure, there's a lot of people, whether it's, being a Mormon or other religions or for whatever the case is, I'm sure that there's a lot of these same sort of similar stories when it comes to homosexuality and being like a young man and like this happening. So I think it's going to be helpful for a lot of people, and we appreciate you coming on today.
Awesome. Thank you. It was my pleasure to come. It was an absolute blast. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Awesome. Have a great rest of your day.
Amazing. You as well. Thank you.
Bye. Ooh. I
That is
love a
very
peek
interesting.
behind the curtain.
It's very interesting, isn't it?
It's
to hear that whole
literally
like a third of
mind-blowing.
that, a third of that, and then you're like, they're all therapists.
Yeah.
You know.
No, I mean, yeah, I don't know if there's anyone out here listening right now that like thinks that has a shot of working, like genuinely.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
I will go on record and say I do not
No
think
shot.
that. But it's crazy, man.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's interesting because he was so committed to it.
Yeah.
You know, like genuinely committed and really put in the time and the effort to try to have this make a change in his life. Obviously it didn't. But I'm glad, it's good to hear that he realized that on his own and is able to, you know, work on trying to eliminate that shame. And like he said, like finally be who he is after going through at, you know, such an impressionable young age, being told like, not good who you are. We have to fix this. This is wrong.
Yeah.
And for him to, you know, be able to come out of that and to be able to talk to us the way he's talking today is awesome.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, I think like being young and this happening, I think it's very similar. Like a lot of guys who are that are gay probably have the same things. Like, what are my parents going to think? If you're religious, what is my religion going to think? Or the church or these other people, or what are they going to think about me? And I just will not ever admit that.
Yeah.
And then to admit it at a young age, 13 years old is young, and to be able to admit that and then feel like, okay, I have to fix this issue somehow. How do I fix it? And being like so bought into that, and then coming out the other end and being like, you know, like going into that with such a like determination to be like, I'm going to fix a problem, and then realizing like this isn't a problem that can be fixed or should be fixed.
Yeah.
It's just like who
It's
I am.
not a problem.
And then having this sort of spiritual moment of like a realization of like, this is just who I am, I think is very powerful, and probably the reason why, you know, he has such a strong idea of like, this is who I actually am, you know, like the shame is like, you know, still working on that because you were young when all that was happening, but like very strongly like knowing who you are, because being so religious and spiritual, and then having that moment of like, no, this is just who I am.
Yeah.
It's like,
no, that is really powerful. You can tell that was truly a turning point for him. And, you know, just to go on record saying gay conversion therapy sounds very gay. Like
the way that
it
he
sounds like a
described it.
comedy bit of like,
And also going back to like what he's saying, that the therapists are like, you know, they're like in this thing. It's like, all right, you guys, you think the way to be ungay is to hug a bunch of dudes?
yeah, come on.
What are we talking about here? Because we got the other people on the other end of the spectrum being like, don't hug dudes, that's gay. So it's like, how can both of these be? How is that like your...
It feels very conflicting.
If anything, I'd be like, let's get some girls in here and hug those.
Yeah,
And
hug,
like,
hug those things.
Learn how to hug the girls. But a guy sitting back being like, yeah, hug them.
Hug each other.
Yeah, hug
Play
me.
basketball, shirtless only.
Yeah, right. The
And
fuck? Yeah.
tell us all the gay things you did this weekend.
Yeah, right.
Like, what?
Tell me your sex stories.
Oh, I
and
love...
he's like, ew, what? Details, though.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa,
I
man.
thought he meant acting out. Like, I thought the
know.
therapist was like, how did you grip the ball? Like, they're just sitting.
Act it out. Get a partner and then act out the scene. It's like, all right, it's getting a little crazy in here. But yeah, we appreciate him coming on and talking to us about that. Anyone who would like to be a guest on our show, hit us up. Our email is oplpodcast@gmail.com. Send us your story and we'll get back to you.
Yeah, follow us on Instagram, TikTok @OPL Podcast. You can support at patreon.com/OPL show and leave some comments. And we love the engagement recently. Just hear what you guys think about the episodes. And we know so many of you guys listening have potentially similar experiences. And it's just really cool to see the conversations that can start in those comments. So keep that up.
Yep. And that is all. See you guys next time.